as you approach then the 50s?
I don't think there's a fixed schedule. I mean, I've heard from people in their 20s who've read my book saying they were going through many of the things that I'm going through in my 40s. My daughter said to me when she saw the title of this book, she said, because there was an old title. It was supposed to, she said, really, Mom, you're in your 40s and you're just asking these questions. I'm kind of asking them when I'm 12. So I think I'm a slow learner, and I've also heard from people in their 50s who say, you think the 40s are like that, wait till you get to your 50s. It really is this.
Yeah. And
yeah.
in general,
I don't know what happens in the 50s. I don't.
We will find out at one point.
Let's hope so. Let's talk a bit about your previous book, French Children Don't Throw Food. That's the title of the international edition. In the US, it was called Bringing Up Bébé. Yeah, I find the international title funnier. And actually, I thought a lot about this book this summer because just like all three of us, I have children. And I went on holiday, and these children are also bi-national, just like yours, growing up in France with different parents from different countries. And actually, I thought about this title, French Children Don't Throw Food. You're actually, you're very positive about French education, more or less, because compared to Americans or Swedish or Dutch children, French children are very well behaved. They sit at a table, they don't shout, and actually it's not true because my children, they do throw food.
It must be their Dutch side, right?
Yeah, but then I thought, when I didn't have children, I thought also this French education, that's a good thing, because at least they're well behaved, they know how to say hello and goodbye, etc. And then I thought, now I'm having children of my own, that French children don't throw food, but as soon as they're adults, they start throwing food. they never grow up. Actually, because they're children. Children in France are not allowed to be children, and so because of that, they start. Yeah, that's how I see it. But I can, and as soon as they're adults, they start behaving like children. So. Completely irresponsible, harassing other people. It's like they really have such a...
I think they start observing the adult codes of behavior, which don't involve throwing food. I haven't seen any critics.
Well, it's a metaphor, of course.
Yes.
They try to make life as difficult as possible. And I thought this summer, thinking of your book, that it's maybe because French children are not allowed to be children that later they take revenge on society.
I would take an issue with your characterization of French children generally. I mean, I don't think I would have written a book about. I definitely wouldn't have written a book about them if I thought they were forced into some kind of mini adult role that it's unsuitable for children. I think they're given quite a lot of freedom, actually.
Yeah, you think so? I think they're like prisoners. I find the schools are like Guantanamo. And I would prefer to send them to Guantanamo than to a French school.
You mean the maternelle or?
Well, the maternelle is okay, but even it's interesting because I don't know if you have the same experience, but when I bring the kids to school, and at French schools, there's always the directrice. She's waiting every morning at the school entrance, and you see a physical change in the parents' attitude, the French parents, because they're still this mix of fear.
They're afraid of it.
Yeah, they're afraid of the school and the teachers. And I really see them. And it's still, even when they're 40, they're still traumatized by school. And so...
Yeah, I'm not... In this book, I don't defend French schools at all. And I have a lot of issues with French schools as well. Although fewer than I had, I think, when my kids were starting out in them. But I really focus... And I critique French schools in this book. But I talk a lot about the structures that are available by the French state that make it easier for parents.
That's true, yeah.
And I talk a lot, which I mean is less striking if you're coming from Sweden or Holland, because it's you probably feel like there's probably not even enough here. But coming from America, it was just like a kind of a breathtaking change of, especially for mothers. But what I really talk a lot about is what the French call éducation that happens in the home. That really was.
But just for our viewers who are not familiar with your book and the difference between, what do you consider the main, briefly the main difference between the American way of educating children and the French way?
There are a lot of elements, but one element is, I think, the American model, which is that everything is centered around the child. The child can interrupt. The child, whatever the child needs, takes primacy. Whereas a French model is the child is a person, but he's an intelligent person who can fit into the life of the family. Of course, there are some parents who are too extreme, and I've seen that as well, and it makes me mad too if I think parents are being mean to their kids. But I find that in general, the parents that I write about in this book and who I'm surrounded by, who are the parents of my kids' friends, are very much attuned to their kids, and they believe in listening to their kids. And if you ask French parents, what is your parenting philosophy, they will almost always say, at least they did when I was researching this book, I don't have a philosophy. I just observe my child. I listen to my child. And communication is really the primary principle that runs through all of the ideas in this book. But yeah, they can be strict about certain things. They will say, for instance, you have to taste this food. Don't tell me that you don't like bananas. Just taste the bananas again, because they know that, even adults don't like certain foods unless they've tasted them 10 or 15 times. So the idea that you reintroduce foods, you cook them different ways, and that food is one of the great pleasures of life, and you don't have to be stuck in this kind of ghetto of kids' food, is a powerful principle which makes every mealtime, I don't know if your wife does this, but makes every mealtime a lot more pleasant. And that sort of culture of eating is really fundamental and can really change your outlook.
I totally agree on the food, but isn't it, I find Dutch children and American children very annoying, and because it's the similar education, the child is at the center of everything, but at least they grow up to be positive, optimistic adults, whereas the French children, they grow up to be, very bleak, or they're
apparently, according to the optimism pessimism researchers, the pessimism comes from school. That's where joy is beaten out of them.
We do agree. It's a French school.
Did you manage to then apply any of these French tricks in your own education of your children?
Yeah, I mean, certainly around food, definitely. Unfortunately, it was one of the reasons I wrote the book was I noticed that French babies sleep through the night on average a lot sooner than American kids do, and apparently in the rest of the world too. And I only kind of figured out what they were doing when my kids were already 2 or 3 years old. It was too late. So I had been through that torture before. But the sleep idea is based on the idea that a baby is a person. And that comes from Françoise Dolto, who I'm sure you've read, who is the sort of Dr. Spock of France. And she said you have to talk to even a little baby, explain what's happening, give him bad news if something terrible is happening in the family. Again, it's this idea of you communicate with the baby, and you communicate with him about sleep. You talk to him or her about what you expect the baby to do, what's going to happen at night, how he has to let his mother sleep, etc. And it's those conversations, even to an infant who you think wouldn't even understand language, that helps the baby adjust to the rhythm of the family.
I think that what I consider the main difference between Swedish education is pretty much, I would say, like the US, American or Dutch, but it is this idea of the trust the French society puts in children, in the young child. They actually believe that this child can learn things and do things. Whether in Sweden the idea is that the child cannot be put any responsibility on this child. He has to be protected. And, so yes, in Sweden, we call it the curling parents.
Right. We say helicopter parents.
Oh, yeah. Hovering around. Exactly. Yeah. And where the child is incapable of anything. And I really like this French idea where you trust the intelligence. I mean, that even the young child.
Even an infant can learn things.
And that they're intelligent, and they can, they're human beings, as you say. They're a person, not just a thing that you need to just.
Yeah, and it's very empowering for the child too. I mean, obviously it's not perfect here. But as a contrast to the sort of curling parent, helicopter parent model, it's really interesting to look at it from a different perspective. For me, the kind of moment when I decided I wanted to write this, one of the moments was my daughter was a toddler. She didn't even talk yet, and she was pulling books off the bookshelves. And
she's just interested in books.
She's obviously very literary, but and I was just watching her do it. I thought, there's nothing I can do. This is what a baby does. And my French friend who was sitting next to me went over to my daughter and said, no, we're not going to do that. Let's put the books back on the shelves, and we're not going to. And my daughter stopped pulling the books off the shelves. And I thought, I had no idea. I could just tell her to stop.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and but isn't it nice to pull books off the shelves? I mean, that's how you discover the world, right? It's not by aligning all the books alphabetically by theme. That's not how life is.
Are you saying I've forever damaged my daughter by?
I'm afraid so. Well, I met her, but she will be all right in spite of your parenting. Let's talk a bit more about France. Actually, you were born in New York City, so you're an American citizen. But last year, you underwent a change. What happened?
I went into a phone booth. I got a letter from the French government last January saying that I had been French for 2 weeks already. Without even knowing it. The mail was delayed. And I thought back, did I know? Did I feel different? Yeah, there was.
And how did that happen? Because it doesn't, happen overnight. You did apply, of course, for French citizenship. I
applied for French citizenship. I'm a dual citizen, so I'm American as well. Sure. I had been living here and paying taxes here long enough, and I qualified. And I thought, why not? Why not? And then Brexit happened. Brexit happened after I had already applied, but I was here because of my husband's British EU citizenship. And suddenly I didn't, that was thrown into doubt. So, and
you had quite a special ceremony as well, right?
Yes, I was inducted at the Panthéon.
Yeah. So, how
come?
It was just by luck. We were invited to this special ceremony that they have, I think, once or twice a year.
So does it feel different, do you think? Do you feel differently now?
My husband actually asked me that during the ceremony. I said, I thought I'd be thinner when I was French. Didn't happen. Yeah,
nothing?
There was something like did it feel different? I started picking up garbage on the street. I was angry. I thought, these are my streets now. I want them to be clean. I started paying more attention to... I speak French, but it's a kind of messy, sloppy French, I would say. And I started, as soon as I became French, paying more attention to, okay, let's just once and for all decide, is this masculine or feminine? And I kind of felt like these words are going to be part of my life probably forever now. So I want to know what they are. Yeah, I became more grounded and I guess more curious about the rest of the country. And
so there are no grown-ups, midlife coming-of-age stories, a very funny book about getting 40. Do you already have a topic for a new book, or is it too soon?
I really like writing kind of funny essays, so I think I'll do more of that.
Okay, good. Well, the book is out now in English, in Dutch also this week, in French later this year, and other languages?
French not yet, but it's coming out in Italian and Hungarian. I'm going to be going to Budapest in a few weeks.
Really?
So, yeah.
Okay. That's
and
nice.
A couple other languages, yeah.
And then, of course, your other international bestseller, I should say, French Children Don't Throw Food, that has been published into how many languages?
27, I think, at last count. I know it's come out in Mongolian. So
wow.
That was very exciting.
Okay. It's a very international topic.
It turns out that hyperparenting is a global issue.
Yeah, and getting 40 as well. Nobody escapes.
Turns out it happens all over the world. I would have thought.
So 2 highly readable books by Pamela Druckerman. If you want to find out more of her books, go to her website, pameladruckerman.com. That's with CK. Thanks for joining us, Pamela.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was really a pleasure.
Well, that wraps up this edition of So French. We hope you have enjoyed it. And all the other summer episodes, conversations with Stephen Clark and Sophie Penner, can be found on the well-known podcast platforms, of course, as are all our previous episodes.
Please follow us on Twitter. It's @SoFrenchNews. And if you have any questions or suggestions, send us an email. Our address is sofrench@sofrench.news.
And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast in iTunes or in the TuneIn radio application. And please share the podcast with your friends.
If you like French music, check out our playlist on Spotify, which we update regularly. Just search for So French Podcast or click the link on our website.
And we'll be back in 2 weeks with a new regular episode about all things French. And that will also be the start of our brand new 4th season already, Sarah.
Don't miss that.
Don't miss that.
We hope you will join us then. Thank you for listening.
Au revoir.